No one knows you but you. No one. Many people may think they know you better than you know yourself, and they will tell you so. But only you know your secrets, your loves, your desires, hates, fears, joys, hopes, dreams. Only you are inside there. Only you know. Why then would you let other people make determinations regarding your life? Why would you, as an adult, let someone who does not know you as well as you do comment on and influence your decisions? Unless you owe them some strong obedience, that makes no sense. You have a life to live. No one can live it for you. And where you are is the sum total of your past choices and decisions. If you really look honestly at your present condition, you will see that. And you have to be content and happy and at peace with where you have put yourself in this life, or you will be miserable. Yet so many of us fall victim to listening to other people's opinions, and we fear making positive changes for ourselves. Example, I was once invited to join the cast of a fabulous, legendary Broadway musical. And the woman I was living with at the time had been brought into the cast earlier. We had both auditioned together. And when I told her they offered me the job, she said, "You don't want to do that show. It's just another show, 8 performances a week. It's not as great as you think it is. Also, you're producing our album. When will you have time to do that?" And sidebar, the creators of the show had approached me in, I guess, kind of the wrong way. They said, "We need a big guy like you to carry the girls around on stage." And I think my vanity was offended that they didn't seem to need my brilliant singing and acting abilities. They just wanted a mule. So I turned it down. Now here's the thing you need to know. I had prayed to be in that show on my knees. I had deeply wanted it for a couple of years, and I turned it down based on someone else's assessment and wound up taking care of her kid at night and driving a taxi in New York instead of being on Broadway while she stayed working in the show. I never suspected that there was a nefarious intent in her, as it later turned out. My God, believe what you want, I have my own personal God, had given me what I asked for, and I rejected it. Do you believe that? I threw it back in his face. How stupid, just dumb and ungrateful was I. How shameful. And I can't help but think where my life may have gone had I rejected her input and proceeded to do what my heart and soul was calling me to do. And why didn't I realize that it was the answer to a prayer? I could have done it all, album and the show. Now understand, please, I do not blame her. It is not her fault. It's all on me. I was totally responsible for that decision. Stupid. And I still regret it. But my God is loving and forgiving. And as soon as I got loose from this person in my life, my whole existence improved. You cannot listen to other people's opinions and embrace them as your own. No one knows you but you. Got it? I had a student once who was a pretty good actor, but he was blocked. He was trying, but he wasn't present in the exercises, and a nice guy to hang with, but something was lacking in his commitment to the work and its scenes. And when it came down to the heart of going into the pure space of creating reality, he seemed to step outside himself somehow and judge what he was doing. He wasn't free. He seemed stuck emotionally, mentally, and psychically by something. And I couldn't figure out on the surface what it was, but it was there. Something that later on, when we managed to get to the roots of what was motivating that unconscious behavior in him that was affecting his work, turned out to be a big generational family. It went like this. There was a broad opinion, if you will, in his family that actors were bums. Bums! Actors were bums. The grandfather used to refer to actor bums all throughout this kid's life. And every time he saw a movie star advertised or someone on TV, the old man would spit, ha, actor bum. Turns out, Grandpa was a Polish Jew who had hid from the Nazis in Switzerland and come to America after World War II. And he and his son, the young man's father, were in the sanitation business, garbage men. But they considered themselves several cuts above the acting profession. Not to say that being a garbage man is not a noble profession. It certainly is. We could not survive as a civilization without them. If you've ever lived through a garbage strike, you know what I mean. We'd very quickly be overrun with filth, disease, and vermin. God bless the garbage man. At any rate, this young actor of mine, I won't mention his name because really I don't have his permission to tell you this story. I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't mind, but I don't want to embarrass him. Also, I'm not fond of being sued, not that he would. He was a very handsome actor, but he was very conflicted about his choice of the career that he felt that he was called to. A sharp, intelligent young man who turned into a very good and committed actor when we were able to get to the bottom of the problem and confront it. But as I say, he was held back by this opinion in his family, whom he loved. So we had a real problem. I sat him down once after the scene and we started working on this question. I told him he had to confront this thing head on and tell the father and the grandfather especially how he felt, or he would never be able to move forward in his work. He said he was afraid to do that. He loved his grandfather and his dad, and he felt obligated to be an obedient son. I said he could love and respect them without having to think their thoughts. I suggested he write to each of them a letter explaining his feelings. At least it would break the ice with them and get it off his chest, and he wouldn't have to confront them necessarily. Well, he said he would do that, and he left, feeling better, I think, but clearly nervous about his assignment. And I put it out of my head. I had other classes, other students, and that meant other problems. He came in the next week, and I could see a visible change in his attitude. He seemed totally alive and happy to be there. And during the break, he came up to me, and I asked him if he had done his assignment, and he said he had. He'd written a letter to each and told them both to be on his side or out of his business. He wasn't going to stand for their negativity toward him anymore. He explained this was a life choice he had made. It wasn't going to change, and it meant a lot to him. And he said, surprisingly, they talked, they understood, and they agreed, and everything seemed okay. But it was a big deal in his family. Now, here's the thing, and this is how these biases often work. Later on that evening, his mother took him aside in private, and she told him the story of why this prejudice existed in the first place. It turns out that his grandmother, when she was young and engaged to his grandfather, but before they were married, had been secretly in love with a young Broadway actor. And they had had a very torrid affair, apparently. But the young lady married the grandfather anyway, due to her strong family pressures. And that would have been the end of the story. But a year or so after they were married, some flowers arrived for her one day, and when her husband asked about them, there was a domestic blow-up. You know, it happens in relationships. And a huge fight, and the grandmother confessed everything, including the fact that she still had feelings for the actor, who in the grandfather's mind immediately became labeled as a what? A bum. And years later, when my student was subconsciously struggling against this prejudice, not even realizing what was holding him back, the grandmother was long since dead, and this young actor still had to take the punishment of something he'd had absolutely nothing to do with. He said when he heard the story, he became so angry that he cried. And once he got that out of his system, he sat down and meditated on it, He forgave everyone in his heart, which is what you have to do, including the grandmother and the actor bum, and he woke the next day feeling completely liberated. And needless to say, his work improved considerably. And, incidentally, he later went on to win 2 Daytime Emmy Awards. Some bum, huh? If you're encountering resistance from anyone toward your choice of career or life, you must confront it and stand up for yourself. Write a letter, make a call, take someone to lunch and tell them how what they're doing makes you feel. Be calm, be centered, be brave, breathe. Don't give in to emotions or anxiety. They will not serve you well. This will not be easy, but the truth will set you free. So, that's it for this lesson. Thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe. And if you know anyone who would benefit by what we're doing here, please pass it on to them. Share with them. All right? So until we see each other again, I wish you peace and success. Maintain good health, happiness, and total self-confidence.